That new intro never gets old, does it?
That's amazing. I'm
Yeah.
always at oh, and then I forget. I was like, oh wait, that's us. Okay.
Yeah. Ooh, I wonder what's coming on next. So anyone who's tuning in, or if you watch this on recording, my name is Matthew Struck. Precious, how are you doing?
I am well. We are getting ready for the holidays, which is going to look a little different this year, I think, like most households. But, we're still, ready to give thanks for all the things we're thankful for.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. So anyone tuning in, if you're not familiar, or if you are a returning viewee of this outlet, this is Sell Like a CPCU. We are put on by the Agents and Brokers Interest Group of the CPCU Society. We talk about sales techniques, little nuances, tricks of the trade that you can work into your schedule, into your routine, and also some high-level sales techniques that you can take forward and outcompete your non-CPCU competitors with, or maybe even borrow to try and compete against the CPCUs. But good luck to you. So to take care of a little bit of business first, however you end up watching this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share, retweet. We can take live comments. So if you're watching live, we would love to hear your comments and questions and take care of them live. But if you do watch the recording, you can also leave them there, and we would love to have a conversation after the fact. So this is a fantastic episode. It is the day before Thanksgiving. And in true Thanksgiving form, we're going to be talking about selling by saying thank you. But before we get into that one, Precious, I have a very important question to ask. Okay.
Please, let's do it.
On your Thanksgiving table, what is your most favorite dish on the entire table?
Oh, that is difficult. On the table, I guess the favorite dish on the table is probably what's being prepared right now. So my 18-year-old daughter loves baking. It's kind of our tradition. She grew up in the kitchen on a stool watching me, got to help a little bit more and more. So she's putting together her famous pumpkin pie. So it is, unless the pumpkin pie is here.
Is she a canned pumpkin pie user or a fresh pumpkin pie?
Fresh pumpkin. She insists on rendering it herself. We roast the seeds, like we do the full thing. So yeah, it's got to be authentic. It's got to be from scratch, and she is the master at that. So I've been kind of moved out of the way to let her do her thing. We're kind of pre-gaming today.
Yep.
Prepping for the main show tomorrow. What's your household gonna do? What's your go-to?
So I was you wouldn't know now, but I was a meat and potatoes kid growing up. So like that was my thing. I'm very much a rabbit now, but I think I kept the potato infatuation. So the mashed potatoes by and far are my favorite. And I couldn't pick a blander thing. I mean, there's always stuff that you can throw into it, but I couldn't pick a blander thing to be out there. But it's just like all purpose. It just like it does a little bit of everything. You can make sandwiches out of it after the fact. We would do potato croquettes for breakfast the next morning. So you could take it, add some cheese and breadcrumbs in there, and make a little kind of like fried potato patty out of it. So yeah, it was always a mashed potatoes kid. Tony Conyas wants to throw a vote in for apple pie. Yeah. Always a good one. Always a good one. Apple pie is a winner. If you're still watching, are you a apple pie purist? Or is it like a la mode whipped cream on top, like the whole nine? Is it just the slice, or is it like extra add-ins? I would love to hear that one. But so anyway, so we are talking about selling by saying thank you. And so this is something that seems counterintuitive, right? Tony's all about the whipped cream. That's fantastic. That's that's a good choice. That's like a nice middle ground. Like, don't overpower it, just compliment it. It's pretty good. Awesome. But so seems kind of counterintuitive, right, Precious? Like saying thank you in order to get the sale.
Well, what's interesting is that, when we really think about all of the choices that our customers have, the honor and the privilege of working with someone is something that we need to express early and often, right? We think for the opportunity. We thank them for their continued business. The beautiful thing about thank you as a strategy is it costs you nothing.
Oh, that's a good one.
You make deposits into the relationship piece of it, because I think that especially in a world where everyone just feels like, well, I'm just doing what's necessary, when you stop and thank somebody, it kind of catches them off guard a little bit, and I think it really just deepens the relationship. So we always have to express gratitude.
Yeah, most definitely. I think I'm right there with you. It's like we just think of yourself, right? Like your own personal day. It's filled with so much that to pack one additional thing in, especially if it's like a salesy kind of thing that you're adding in there, you're having to sacrifice or basically push something else to the bottom of the pile, so to speak, in order to kind of take that meeting or take that call. So that's a big one. And I think it's all too often forgot, and I don't know what it is. It could be just I'll defer to you on this one, because maybe this is like maybe it's like the machismo thing that goes with sales, like where you walk in and you've got your tie done up, like non-COVID, right? You get your tie done up, you walk into the conference room, and it's like, well, of course you invited me here because I have the greatest thing since sliced bread. So you should invite me in, and I deserve this time. Do you kind of get that impression? I think there's kind of like an entitlement sometimes that you have to fight against, and you have to kind of tap into a little bit of humility sometimes.
That's true. But I also think that, again, directly or indirectly, intentionally or subconsciously, we give people cues on how to engage with us. We teach people the behaviors that will resonate with us, what we'll tolerate, so when we set the tone. And so as insurance advisors, and that's really, how we title ourselves. We're advisors, we're specialists. Yes, we have a license, and not to discredit like the term agent, but I like to put, prospects or customers in the same mindset they have when they set an appointment with their doctor, when they go in to consult with their attorney, when they're talking to their tax accountant, because we're the same caliber professional. And so when they kind of understand that I'm, well prepared, like I said, you're in the right place at the right time with the right person, you have to set that tone of it's a privilege to have access to somebody like me,
Yeah.
So the way that comes across, for example, I'm very respectful of time. If you want to get on my calendar, if you want time with me, my team and we just recently added like the Calendly link to our signature
Yep.
schedule time, because I like to come prepared. I would like for them to be prepared. I would like to be prepared. I would like to research anything that we're going to go over, so I thank them for, carving out that time. Because to your point, there's an opportunity cost for everything. The time that they spend with us may or may not impact the time that they could be earning revenue elsewhere. And so I have to make sure that there's a value proposition. This is the takeaway from our time today. We're either going to walk out of this discussion with a better understanding, a better value, but there's something to be gained, by spending time here. So yes, so demanding that level of, engagement and participation. I think that when you put a value on something, people tend to show up. If you bought a ticket to an event, you're probably less likely to blow it off than something free. And so when you know that there's a value associated, this isn't just a selling opportunity for me. I really want to make sure that you understand what's at risk, what's out there, and how we're going to work to solve it, because we can't stop the storm from coming. We can just prepare for what happens when the sun comes up the next day.
Oh yeah. Well, and you raise a good point, and it's tangential or linked to this conversation is the concept of setting the expectation of the value of that first meeting or that sales process or whatever is going to play out, right? And this applies more to pretty much any sales process, not just insurance, but really setting the expectation of that value that's going to be derived on the front end. So that, like you said, the person on the other side of the table or the virtual call, as it may be, has some reasonable expectation and also knows what's expected of them, right?
Yeah.
But also it gives them something to measure against. I think 9 times out of 10, the reason why sales are not successful is you could make the greatest pitch in the entire world, but if someone on the other side of that conversation doesn't know kind of the ecosystem in which you're having that conversation, you could have the best value proposition ever, and they might just not see any value in it. But setting that value proposition up front and communicating that, I think, is a big deal. Mechanically, how do you see it play out for you? Like, I mean, obviously, it's as simple as starting off and saying, thank you very much for your time. I know it's very precious, and I'm going to be respectful of it, and this is what you can expect of me. But does it take another step further than that, than simply saying it?
I think so, because especially in our environment, you can appreciate as an independent agent, right?
Mhm,
Um, it's really important that we have that buy-in from the prospect right out of the gate.
mhm,
Really important, for example, that we know that to the highest degree possible that we have some exclusivity.
mhm.
If you want to work with us, if we're in agreement that this is a good fit, that you trust me as an advisor, that I understand your business, and we're going to move forward, I have to be the only one in pursuit of this, because the way markets are in terms of, reserving certain, blocking markets and things like that, there can't be more than one, dog in the hunt.
Yes.
And
Yep.
so, it's those small closes along the way, right? Because the first close is selling me as the professional. Do you
Yep.
want to work with me? You know, Recognizing what event triggered them coming to the table.
Mhm, mhm.
What has you shopping today? What is the need? And finding a way to ask, whether it's explicitly or indirectly, what do I need to do to get this done? Like, is it
Yeah.
purely pricing? Are you looking for service? Are you looking for, a little bit more of the consultative piece of it? Because when you can get them to articulate, if we can do A, then you'll follow through with B, that's really, again, back to the respect of time.
Right.
My objective is to find you, to get you to a better place where you're more comfortable, better covered, saving money, whatever that objective is. But in exchange for that, I need you to be responsive, engage, provide information. And so if we're going to go into this partnership, because the partnership starts well before the bind,
Right.
that's the
Yeah.
relationship building. That's when you're just feeling it out. Because the truth is, you know, it may not be a good fit. So to be able to recognize that early, and set those expectations. Typically, if you're going to go to a doctor's office appointment,
Mhm.
at minimum, you got to get in, you got to register, you get checked out, the doctor comes by. So you don't go into the doctor's office saying, I have 20 minutes. Minutes, I'm going to walk, you know. And so that appointment setting and that expectation setting, prepping them for this is going to be probably different than what you've done in the past. I'm
Right.
going a little bit more thorough, but the purpose, the takeaway is I have to really understand your business so I can tell your story
Yes.
to the underwriter, so I can make it make sense, because we want to place you somewhere that's going to be a long-term fit, hopefully. So it does no good to not fully disclose to them what your growth plans are and things like that. We want it to be competitive, and we want it to be stable. It does me no good to place you in a market and the next year I have to remarket you because things change, because I didn't know enough of what I needed to know up front. And
Yep.
so tell people that this is going to feel different. This isn't calling in and getting a quick turnaround, just based on some assumptions and superficial information. We're about to do something. We're going to do a deeper dive, because truly the key to recognizing the need is you have to have that risk analysis. We have to figure out where is the boogeyman and how much money do we need to put behind making sure he can't get in.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a great lead in to something that anyone who's heard me kind of like speak before on like marketing or sales, I always come back to this because it's so effective. Bringing something for free, right? Like that could also be considered not just being, saying thank you, but also kind of that, like, giving before you get kind of mentality. I always like to bring something of value for free to the table. So, for instance, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're talking about basically kind of like a tryout. Like, we're going to do an analysis. We're going to identify a couple of areas where you're probably at risk. And there's probably some non-insurance solutions that you can implement that may not even cost very much money at all, that can help protect you. And you're kind of bringing that to the table as that kind of, like, feel it out kind of process, and like that show of good faith to say, we're here to work together as a team and help each other out. I love that. I love that approach, because it's also, this also works in hiring too, not to kind of like divert too far, but I always love the idea of like a tryout, like, or if you have like a couple of people and you're trying to figure out who the best fit is, like, see if one or both of them is available to just like come for a weekend, not a weekend, an afternoon or 2 afternoons, and like hang out with the team, see how they fit in, like have them do some sample work, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I love that. It's also, so I'm not sure this works with small commercial, right? Like, this is or it could work with small commercial, but the question is how much you're putting into it versus what you're getting out, right?
Well, the things that I really, the tone, the culture of organizations is that I'm a firm believer that the level of service that you receive really shouldn't be predicated by the revenue that your business brings. We aim to give basically white glove service. I always talk about white tablecloth, linen napkins.
Oh yeah. Yep.
To a segment of the market that's maybe used to counter service and seat yourself, right?
Yes.
And so the beauty in the space when you're talking to, oftentimes in small commercial, the person you're on the phone with is the owner. They're not quite large enough where they can afford to have like a risk manager on staff. And so you become that, you feel that need for them, and so really what I think, oftentimes during that establishing trust, like, I'm going to give you something that you can take away, is I offer to walk them through the incumbent policy. So if they send me a copy of it and I tell them, again, I don't have a stake in this whatsoever, but I just want to make sure, let's kind of talk through where you are today and that you understand the significance of these numbers and these terms on this deck page. Like, let's start there. Right. So regardless if you do business with me directly or decide that, it's not the right time or we're not moving forward, at minimum, you walk out of here with a better understanding, because I'm doing two things when I'm doing this walkthrough. The first thing is I'm actually trying to separate myself from their current agent, because if you're in my office or on my call and I you aha moments, that's really shining a spotlight on you may have an agent, but you lack a relationship, right? Because if I'm asking questions for you that you don't have the answers to right now, then there's an opportunity, And so I tell people, of course, I understand, rightfully so. Sometimes customers are hesitant to give you the entire package. Because there's that, I call it the used car phenomena, right? If you walk in somewhere and say that I want to buy something under $10K, all of a sudden that $8,000 car becomes $99.99 because that was your budget. And so oftentimes people are afraid to show their hand because they are like, are you really going to go the extra mile, and deliver for me if what I have, the other option I have available. And so I encourage customers, you're free to mark out whatever pieces of data you don't want to share. So you can send me of course, if they're savvy on the policy, what I'm looking for is that rate page, right?
Yeah. Yes.
What the rate basis was, what did you, declare as your revenue numbers, how many locations, how many employees, that sort of thing. Because of course, if you have the entire thing, you can decipher that. But bare minimum, I'm an insurance professional. Prior to getting into the business, I know this stuff read like Greek. The upfront free service that I'm offering to you is helping you to better understand where you stand today. And so once we have that baseline, now I can make recommendations, and now we can see, at the end of it. Now, of course, full disclosure, I explained to them, I cannot endorse your current policy. It's not mine to change. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through where you are. and we're going to do a pressure test. If these losses were to occur, how would your current policy respond? And are you okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the freebie. And again, if you set that expectation with them, that we're going to have, basically you're going to get, steakhouse service for fast food budgets, because the idea is that you're going to grow,
Yeah.
So it's going to be applicable. Some of this may not be immediately so. But yeah, we still treat, entry level minimum premium customers with the same care and concern, because they're still business owners and they still deserve that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the that's a good point. Like, I was thinking more in terms of kind of like that long term, like, 3-month kind of like observe period, but that's a good point that you're making is, within an hour time frame, you can build that rapport pretty quickly and give them something for free that's really high value. I think what you're also getting at is something that might be kind of like the unicorn of insurance sales, in that a lot of brokers just have a knack for being able to get BORs, right?
Yeah.
And that is like, what, regardless of whether or not that you market them the next renewal period somewhere else, your ability to get that BOR has a lot to do with rapport, whether or not that prospect sees you as someone of authority and value. And also, if you can immediately communicate to them that you're bringing something to the table that they're not currently getting, especially because, we live in an environment where typically, unless you're on a fee basis, I mean, you're getting paid the same as Joe down the street. So, you might as well get, you as the insurance buyer should get as much value as you can for that amount of money that you're spending on it. Right. I think that's huge. I think, do you ever use like handouts or like white pages or like, the new Vogue thing, because it's become so not easy, but it's become a little easier, is books, right? Like, you can write a little kind of like how-to guide, ebook, something like that. Are you guys deploying anything like that right now?
Not currently. We've been in discussion with that in terms of how frequently and what kind of data is most valuable and meaningful, to our customers. Because one of the things I think that we fall into the trap is that, we measure things according to the value that we associate with it, and we don't really do any research to find out, is that even a feature that our client is interested in? And so, for example, if you have a book of business that is, primarily, blue collar, some of the, the bells and whistles, on a portal may or may not be anything that they even open up and look at,
Right.
So we pour so much effort into one thing, and there's, the ROI on it, isn't there. And so when you are working in these very, niche industries, we're trying to get in front of where they spend their time, so more and more, like, versus a newsletter, social media,
Yeah.
to follow us, putting out, little tidbits of information, resharing stuff, as far as trends and things like that. And so that's what we, again, are aiming to do, is to be a resource. So obviously the commodity that we're selling you is the insurance, but we also just want to be kind of a hub, your go-to, for things that are going to be also impactful and important to your business.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of what got me on that frame of reference, or just kind of how I go down that track. Like, I've actually, I need to kind of like up my game as far as that goes. I've created like an ebook for risk management, but it's, like you said, it's very much, very general. It's not targeted at any specific industry, or any specific kind of like style or size of client. So I really have to do a better job of that. And my thought is that, like we were talking about, people's time is so valuable, and there are only so many hours in the day right now, and everyone feels like they're kind of taxed to the maximum. Even having the freedom of not having to commute anymore, for a lot of people, they feel like they're still taxed in terms of the amount of time. Is just coming up with a really basic, like super simple, like just on like a post-it note, or on a note card kind of thing, that's like, the commercial risk management note card, right? Like something like that. That's just like some basic pointers or policies and procedures to have in place. But one of the things that got me onto this was the first one was, if I can share this, hopefully this came up. Yep. So the thank you economy. Now, that being said, agents and brokers, interest group, and CPC society, anything that we like show or kind of like showcase and things like that, this is not like an endorsement. We don't make any money, anything like that. So just know that, you know, do your research, see if this works for you. This is something that I've read and I've really kind of taken to heart. Gary Vaynerchuk is brace yourself. He's a little not safe for work sometimes when he puts out videos. So he's very frank. He's from the Northeast. Well, I mean, he grew up most of his life in New Jersey, so that's why he's kind of akin to me. He speaks like it. But this is the idea that the economy has changed, right? It's this idea of being able to say thank you is, you know, it's a huge deal nowadays, where, you know, before the value of the product was assumed to be the thank you. That's not it anymore. Now you're supposed to say thank you before the product is even purchased.
Yeah.
Tony's a big fan, which is fantastic. So I have some social proof there. I don't know if have you ever heard of this one? I can't remember the name of it. So there was a guy who he worked in financial planning, and he wanted to make like an ebook kind of, or not even an ebook at the time. He wanted something that he was going to give to his prospective clients that was essentially a full personal financial plan, but
Okay.
on a note card. Have you ever heard of this one?
No, but
It is like, I'm gonna have to. I'm googling my face off right now. I didn't come prepared for class, but let me see if I just put in something like note card financial plan. He turned it into a book. Um, this might be it. The 9 simple money rules, all on one index card.
oh wow,
And the last guy's last name is Pollock. That sounds right. So let me just double check here.
pull it on screen.
Yeah, no, I am not. I'm not streaming my search history, so it might just be called 9 Simple Rules. Oh, here we go. It's called The Index Card: Why Personal Finance Doesn't Have to Be Complicated, by Harold Pollack. Let me pull this up here.
Oh wow.
This is like a fantastic idea, because everyone, especially in our industry, a lot of us can totally kind of like nerd and geek out and get kind of, you know, wrapped up in the very finer points of it. This guy came at it from the client point of view, and he was like, if I was to hand someone an index card, but in reading through the index card, when they got to the end, if they took all the steps, they would have like a Cadillac or a BMW or Mercedes type of personal financial plan all set to go for them. He was like, that was my goal. Let me make it as powerful but as simple to follow as possible. And this book is literally the embodiment of that index card that he used to work up for, you know, his prospects and stuff like that. So I always found that really interesting. I haven't had the chutzpah to do it just yet, but I need to find a way to do that.
Well, I know when I was doing benefit sales, like on the back of my card, it gave a side-by-side comparison, just showing the when you leverage pre-tax dollars versus post-tax dollars, you know. So it just kind of showed, you know, if you allow an employee to purchase pre-tax, then it actually reduces taxable income, reduces this, reduces that, you know. So it was just a really high-level illustration. It was just on the back of the business card, because we were setting appointments to let us come in and review what you do and see, you know, how much of this we can leverage in your favor. And so giving them just a little sample, right? Not enough to replace me. I don't want you to look at that and all of a sudden not need my services, but a teaser. You know, I did a presentation for a group this time last year. And of course, my name's Precious. And so I love to do things that have like alliteration, right? So I wrote like the 5 P's of protection, you know, and so just very high level. I just wanted it to be something that stuck, something that, when they thought about it, they had to think about me. I think I actually reposted it as an article on my LinkedIn, just really talking about, your people, your property, your, things like that. I'm not going to give away all the P's, but to your point, something that even if they walk out of a meeting and they only retain one or two things, that they have something that they can actually sink their teeth into. Because sometimes, especially, in my world with smaller businesses, it's that paralysis of analysis. You've given them so much and they're frozen. They're afraid to take a step because they don't want to make a misstep. And that's when, to your point, I think that's what you're getting at, having this game plan, right? This good, better, best. Today, these are the things that you have to have in order to do business, like, period. These are the required coverages. But I need you to understand that this is good and it's sufficient, but we're going to talk again and we're going to build on that and we're going to review things, because hopefully when we meet in 6.
Oh, did I lose you?
Incoming call.
Yeah.
When we revisit, hopefully revenue's up, maybe headcount is up, things are going to look different. And so planting that seed earlier, that this isn't a set it and forget it. This is a thing that should always match what your exposure is, which means we're going to have to revisit, very similar to going to the doctor. You can have a clean bill of health and be, the poster child for fitness today, but we're still going to run labs eventually again. We're still going to check in and just make sure that what we have you set up on is still really, sufficient. And so for the agents' offices, I'm a firm believer that your CSRs or your account managers they have their ear to the ground. They're seeing the types of requests that come in, and oftentimes that's indicative of changes that we need to be aware of, because all of a sudden you start seeing, oh, look at these, there's the certificate request, you've got a different type of cert holder right now. Are you changing your business model? I'm seeing the frequency of this. Is this enough coverage for you anymore? So there's all sorts of cues, even if you can't get them to commit to a regular revisit schedule, that we need to be mindful of and say, there's some uptick in activity here. Maybe it's time for us to revisit and let the customer know, again, it's just out of concern. These are triggers that usually are indicative of bigger things happening that have, implications. So, going back to saying thank you, it's really letting the customer know that the reason that you're reaching out is to protect their interests. This isn't just because we've got a promotion, I got to bind 5 more before the day's out. This is because I have concerns that what we discuss might not be applicable anymore.
Right.
So let's meet and let's talk about it out of concern for where you are. That's that I'm not just here for my bottom dollar. I'm here to provide a genuine service for you, because the better we do.
Yeah, no, that's a huge value, I think, and that can be, again, these are sales techniques that are applicable in so many different facets of life. Like, put whatever symbolism or example on it that you want. Like the physical health aspect is a perfect example of that. Like, how you pick the physician is whether you trust them, whether they hit like the big kind of notes right at the beginning, right? That's assuming that you don't pick your physician just based off of like, going to the registry and the health insurance page and be like, oh, this person's nearest to me. But, if you do go through that selection process, it's, it's the big notes first, right? And then it's the plan moving forward. And the plan isn't what you have now sucks. We have to go 100 miles an hour until we get to this endpoint. It's, let's take it bite by bite by bite. And I think we'll probably hit on that at a future time in terms of like just selling in general, in terms of how you kind of like upsell, which is also in our line of business. Like, it sounds dirty, right? Like, if you're a car salesman, upselling is, maybe it's not a dirty thing, but it's like, it's kind of like on that like Weasley level, right? For us, it's not a Weasley thing. It's like you're leading the horse where it needs to go, right? But the key is you have to just like, give them step-by-step basis or leave the breadcrumbs in order to get them to where they're going or where they need to go. It's in their best interest. But that's a good point.
The thought process that, again, you can't present a cure until you've established a need. You have to have buy-in. So this morning, I had a meeting with my team, and I have a whole presentation I'll have to send to you offline. That's basically, it's the doctor model and how that applies to insurance sales. Right. And so I talk about, when you set the appointment, you have an expectation of how long it's going to take, reasonably what the steps are. And it normally starts with, and we mentioned it briefly, what brings you here today? Like, what is your chief complaint? Why did you set the appointment? And then a big part of it is the info that's being shared by the patient, right? So they're telling you, when did it start? What have I done to try to fix it? So on and so forth. And then at some point during that visit, they're going to come in and they're going to take vitals because they're trying to confirm the things that you've said, right? You said, I've got pain, and like, well, is there a fever and how much, and so on and so forth. And so long story short, after all this info is aggregated, then the doctor is going to walk you through a plan of care. And the plan of care requires engagement on both ends, because it does me no good to write your prescription if you're not going to the pharmacy. If I tell you these are the things that you need to do to get better and you have no intention on doing them, or if I've not shown you truly what it entails to do, like if I tell you, oh, well, you need to be taking your blood pressure, the question before that ought to be, do you have a blood pressure cuff at home, right? Like, can you even do what I'm recommending? Because you don't have that buy-in and that cooperation, then the rest of it, doesn't even matter. And so when we go into these consultations, it's really important right out of the gate that, number one, you kind of ascertain what is the risk tolerance of the person you're talking to. Are they oblivious to the gaps in their coverage and they just don't care? Are they aware and there's a budget constraint? Like, where do we fall in this spectrum? Because, when you're able to effectively walk through and show these are all the areas in which, if I were giving you a report card, like, these have a passing grade. These are all of the gaps that today you have an exposure where you're bare. Are you comfortable with that? And oftentimes they may not even have known there was a thing. And so there may be some sort of supplemental or complementary something that they can purchase to help seal up, the cracks, almost like with your house, it's like, okay, well, your door has a bolt lock, but your windows, is really the point of entry where someone can get in. So as a professional, you have to become really keen at being able to identify which of the two. Is it lack of knowledge or just, the general, just not concerned about those things? Because someone who has concerns, and especially if the concern is bigger than first party, when you start getting into third party stuff, you don't care, but do your customers know you don't care?
Yeah. that is the honest truth. I think and all along that process kind of ties back into the overall idea of this episode is you should be appreciative along each one of those steps. Like, you did a fantastic job. Thank you so much for doing that. I understand that was a lot of work, or, the other thing that we could get into, which is a whole other episode completely, is, there's the decision makers and then there are the people that actually get the work done. Right. So small commercial, it might legitimately be the business owner that you're working with who is not just pulling the trigger, but also, getting you the background information or working with you on the policies and procedures that you're updating. But in a lot of situations, it's a administrative assistant, it's a general manager, it's an operations manager, it's the CFO. And those folks, if you don't thank them, if you're not appreciative of them, you're never going to get to the finish line, because they're like, you're just another, how should I put it? You're just another annoyance in their day. Like, you're another thing that the owner told them to like take care of, right? And if you are not treating them well, I mean, like, it's the scenario where it's the sales, it's the successful sale that happens because you sent flowers to the secretary at the front desk. Like, that's where it comes from. And so all along that process as well, like folks need to remember to be thankful and and it doesn't always have to be the word thank you. You know, it could always be like, I appreciate you doing that. I know that was a lot of work, or, yeah, you did a fantastic job here. Like, just like give them a shot in the arm or like a pat on the back or something along the way, so let me talk to you about some more kind of like exotic ways of saying thank you. And this isn't always kind of like at the point of sale. In fact, in a lot of states, you're not allowed to do this because technically it's like rebating. But just the idea of taking like a personal interest in the people that you're looking with, or we're looking to work with, or at least a professional interest in them, and just out of the blue doing something to show your appreciation, right? And it doesn't always have to be buying something, but a perfect example is, and forgive me, I think you've heard this example of mine before, but the office manager who, the owner's on my side and wants to bring me in. The office manager isn't really a huge fan. Well, the owner pulls rank, brings me in, and now I have to like win over that person, right? To end up staying on it. Because if I don't, again, it's that scenario where if it's the person who's taking care of it on a day-to-day basis, they will, they'll sabotage you. Maybe not consciously, but that could sabotage the relationship. So I kind of trolled him on Twitter and found out that he, liked a particular hockey player. And so it was like, $20. I mean, it's under, whatever threshold. Most states it's like $25 or $50, but it was like $20. I got him like a signed puck. It was not, it wasn't the elite all-star player. It was like someone who sat on the bench that I think he kind of like knew personally. But to this day, that puck sits on his desk, right? And it was a thank you. It was a show of good faith, or it was a thank you for his show of good faith for working with me to the best of his abilities, even despite the fact that he wasn't necessarily the one who got to make the decision. Full disclaimer: if you're going to do that, make sure it's not when you're in the middle of proposing something. Okay, regardless of the price or the value or anything like that. You should never wander into that realm where it's like, oh, well, they only said yes because you gave them this thing. Like the worst thing is when the salesperson's like, well, it was only a $20 dinner. Well, no, the price tag doesn't matter. It's like, it's the timing, it's the optic, But so that being said, I mean, have you ever kind of like, done anything like that? Or do you guys this time of year, does your firm send out, some kind of like gift or anything like that to the client base?
We're not doing gifts right now, not this year. We've kind of talked about a couple things in terms of what would be meaningful, with gifts. And gifts are always kind of funny because a lot of times I worked at a firm where we sent brownies. It was like a little brownies or whatever, and it was like
and someone's always like, I'm gluten intolerant, right? Like
somebody, exactly. Someone, somewhere is going to take issue. But then on the flip side, you have someone that says, hey, I want to write like all this extra business with you because those brownies were fantastic. But to your point, as far as things that you can do that maybe don't even have a direct monetary cost, social media, liking and following them, because they're liking and following you. I do a lot of, connections, right? Like, oh, okay, well, you're looking to grow in this space. I have some other folks that are kind of in that space. Allow me to kind of set up an introduction and see if that goes somewhere. So we do that because we have a lot of businesses in our book of business that are complementary. And so pairing them together or, making them aware of other resources, sometimes things like that, go a long way. I know that we used to do kind of a feature on our customers. Like, we would write something and be like, oh, look, we have so-and-so, we're really excited, say welcome to our newest, policy holder. And, this is their contact. This is where you can get in touch with them. So just boosting and supporting, especially in the commercial space is huge because if you can get them in front of a new, pool of prospects, then again, it's a win-win because literally you're helping them make revenue that they can use to pay premium.
Yes, definitely. That's like one of my best sales techniques is when I come to the table, I'm telling them that, this is not a set it and forget it kind of thing from the standpoint of like our relationship, right? So like, One thing that I learned from my mentor in my former seat was he would always ask who those folks were looking to get in contact with, whether it was specific individuals or companies, or if it was just in general, right? And your point is a big one too, with the advent of more, social media and digital and stuff like that, especially in kind of like a context like this. If you run like a virtual vlog or podcast or even a blog or something like that, do a profile and don't even make it a requirement that they be a client. Do a profile on someone who isn't a client, right? Like, and help them before they even bring you on board is a big one. To your point also, I don't write a ton of not-for-profit business, but I have a handful. A lot of them are kind of like closely linked to municipalities and school districts and things like that I work with most of the time. And but I'm always on the lookout for those little kind of like competitions that can get them $500, $1,000 or something. And you know what? The majority of the time they don't get the money, right? Because it's some kind of, but if you're filtering those things to them, you're at least showing that you're trying to kind of like help the cause, So if it's like a social media campaign where, a picture, however many upvotes or whatever, gets its entry, you can upvote it. You can key them into that's actually occurring, which is the first big step, but you can upvote it. And like you said, you can share within your professional and your personal networks and saying, look, do me a favor and help get this thing a little bit higher is always a big deal. Municipalities in New Jersey running that all the time.
Yeah, when you connect with someone on LinkedIn, for example, whether it's a prospect that you're going after or someone you've recently done business with, oftentimes, you get to see it's more than just a two-dimensional view of who they are, right? Because you get to see things like, for example, where they attended school a lot of times, what charities and nonprofits they're involved in. So I have, for example, if it's maybe a neighborhood association, right? And notice that the decision maker there sits on the board and is really into like helping the homeless. And so I may, make a donation or, kind of share some info that's going to kind of tug at the heartstrings a little bit, where you show care and concern for the same causes that they show care and concern, so that can be a comment. I'm not saying be, don't fake it, right? If that's not face, then that may not be how you execute on it. For example, I think I shared recently on LinkedIn and a couple of things. One of the things that's near and dear to my heart, especially on the eve of Thanksgiving, are the food banks. The food banks this year, it's just dire for some households, in our country. And so here in the North Texas area, the North Texas Food Bank, they're matching funds. So if you donate, they've got different corporate sponsors that are agreeing to match. And so they shared, for example, I think $25 can buy, I think, 150 meals. Right. And so I've just been kind of encouraging folks. I'm like, hey, if you're in a position where you and your household are taken care of, if you're able, a small gift can be stretched with this match right now, go out there and, consider a donation. Now, I'm not officially affiliated with this group by any means, but that's something that, just an awareness piece. So that's also another way, in addition to pre-COVID, right, going to the events that they go to and hope that, they run into you enough times where you're familiar, finding ways for people to hear your voice or to really feel like they've connected with you, so that when you do finally make that final approach and ask for the business, they're doing business with someone that they, have a good impression of. Because to your point earlier, oftentimes that admin person, that risk manager or whomever, they have a preference. They have a vendor preference. And so if you can find a way to be, kind of endear them. So when it comes up again later, hey, do we want to stick with them? They're like, hey, I've had a really good experience with this agency because they're always, very, punctual and, thorough and whatever that, descriptor that you want them to use when they think of you, that brand, because they all have choices. And especially when somebody new comes on board, because chances are they have a preferred partner somewhere. that they're like, oh, when I've done this for this other organization, we always use XYZ carrier or agency. So just putting out those relationship builders. I also do handwritten thank you cards. I'm still a
Mm.
fan of those. Yes. They don't have to be really long, but it's just really something when it shows up in the mail, because it's a smaller envelope. So it's obviously not a bill. It's handwritten. You can hold it up to the light. You can see the impression on the envelope. And it's usually something simple. And I still buy business cards, right? Because I've won a lot of business because cards, they kind of walk like pens and other swag, you
Mm.
know. And so I've ended up in places where like, oh, well, so and so recommended you. And I don't even know who so and so is, because it's like, a couple recommendations removed. I'm so thankful for the business. And I do try to encourage agencies to have some sort of recognition, referral, reward program. Just something where you just tell them, hey, again, if you know anyone else who's looking for a better experience, I'd be honored by your referral. Send them my way. Make sure they mention your name.
Yeah.
Because we want to, because on occasion there are deals that we don't win, but they have that respect for the process and say, hey, you know what, it wasn't a good fit for me, but I have a colleague that this might be right up their alley. So you never want to, you learn so much more in a goodbye than a hello. And I
Mm.
think sometimes as a salesperson, once we figure that the deal's going south, we stop nurturing it. So
That's
thank you
the truth.
even for the shot, right? Hey,
Yeah.
Matt, I appreciate the time. This point, it doesn't look like I have any better solutions for you, but let's stay in touch. And if anything changes, I'm always available. If there's anyone else, I would love a chance to work with them as well. Thanking them for the opportunity is huge.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like you just taught a master class, and like there's like 15 things that I just want to like jump into. The first thing that you said was I think extremely powerful. Be authentic, right?
Mhm.
Like don't BS your thank you. Okay. It's better if you don't say it than
Mhm.
if you say thank you and you're disingenuous about it, right?
Mhm. Always.
Yeah, it's not just a waste of time. I mean, it also undermines your credibility or what they perceive as your character, right? Like, I mean, if you're willing to, like, a thank you is extremely important. Like, there's a handful of sayings in language that carry so much weight, right? Like, there's like I love you, there's like thank you, there's on the other end of the spectrum, it's like I hate you, right? When you say like those really heavy phrases, if you say them with a disingenuous nature to you, it just completely cuts your credibility out from under you, like just completely. Because if you something important like that, if you can BS your way by saying that, then something that's middle of the road, like how am I to expect you to tell me the truth when that needs to be something that you tell me the truth on that could actually be something of consequence, right? It's not as great of consequence as those other things. But the other thing that you said was fantastic. I mean, it goes right along with, taking a personal interest in the people that you want to do business with, and what they're interested in is, the whole idea of like, price competition and things like that. Look, if they're really invested in a certain type of movement or nonprofit or something like that, and you're on board, you're committed, you are going to help out with that because they hold it near and dear, and you also see the value there. That $500 price difference, they're gonna be like, who cares? Like, even if I bring this other person on for 500, like, I don't want to spurn the person that's helping with
Mhm.
this. And granted that that's not supposed to be like, it's supposed to be one of those things where if you get involved in the nonprofit and then the client fires you and then you're not involved in it anymore, you probably weren't involved in it in the first place for the right reason, right?
Yeah.
But that being said, there's still, a deeper connection there if you're supporting those efforts. I think there's like 9 million other things that you said there that are like really extremely powerful stuff. The handwritten note thing is absolutely fantastic. I think that is something that is a dying art. Like,
Yes.
just someone who takes the time to handwrite something and stick a stamp on it and put it in the mail,
Mhm.
is, so many people defer to the convenient option of an email or a text or something like that. That is that is huge. Are you typically doing that? Are you doing that like after the sale? Or are you doing before it? Like, what's the timing on that?
It depends. I send thank you cards, like you said. I buy them in bulk from the Hallmark or whatever,
Mm,
and I thank people for introductions. I thank people for taking meetings. I thank people, the sale. I just, I love receiving them, and
mm.
like a little bit old fashioned. And obviously, make sure that you're sending it to the right place, because sometimes, sometimes if what you have is like a company PO box or remittance address, it's probably not ever going to make it to the recipient.
Yeah.
But dropping,
You,
notes matter. Yeah.
you know what kind of kills this too, though? So many places have gone to front end scanning. Right.
Yeah.
So like it loses a little bit of it. But again, like, as long as you're not dealing with like a mega client, chances are it'll find their way. But yeah, that does kind of complicate it a little bit. One thing I did want to do was so again, not a full scale endorsement or anything like that, but I don't know if you've ever heard of this organization, Precious, but the Insurance Industry Charitable Foundation, IICF.
Yes.
Um, we've actually been doing some work with them in the Northeast. A handful of our chapters got together and put a donation together for them. And what they do is they actually find, look, the big charities and the big not for profits, they get a lot of top billing and marketing and celebrity endorsements.
Hmm.
This group actually kind of bundles together specifically insurance industry donations, and they find these kind of like off the beaten path nonprofits that, again, they have a metric, right? So it's not like 50% goes to expenses. Like, I think they have a pretty strict amount of money of the donated money that has to go to the actual people or the effort or the program. But they find these kind of like off the beaten path nonprofits that are helping, that don't get top billing and marketing. So that's definitely something that folks can look into, is the IICF. Either I think they mostly coordinate with companies, but I think you can give to them as an individual. I forget. I'm just looking. Looks like you can direct donate, so you might be able to give as an individual as well. But a lot of the insurance industry works with them. So, but yeah, so we actually, in a former life, and I've continued this practice now for holidays, like we'll send a holiday card, being respectful of understanding that some folks celebrate Christmas, some folks celebrate Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, some folks don't celebrate at all, right? So we kind of send like a season's greetings type card. And we end up making a donation on the part of our client base toward a not-for-profit. And that's really a way of saying, like, thank you very much. We appreciate your business, and we're going to continue to grow our relationship throughout the year. But at this time period, just know that working with us, you have helped us give to this organization to help others.
Absolutely.
So,
I know that
but
downtown Dallas, for example, with our speakers at our events, oftentimes in lieu of an honorarium, we make a donation on their behalf to the charity of their choice.
oh yeah,
So charitable giving is huge, and ways to, again, cement relationships and show thank you is to support the things that they are holding, that they cherish as well. So there's so many different ways to say thank you. The cards. I mean, not to discredit, an email that's not just like a template. Something
mhm,
that might be, um, you know, handwritten. Thank you specifically for, and that's another thing as well. When you say thank you, be specific about what you're thanking them for. Thank
yeah,
you for your time. Thank you for taking my call. Thank you for getting this over to me. Thank you for just having an open mind, or being accessible for something, because I think, to your point earlier, thank yous are like apologies. If they're not specific and genuine, then they just kind of fall flat. you
mhm.
it kind of comes across the same. It's like, how are you? People say how are you all the time, but don't even wait for a response. So if you're going to do it, execute on it well. That way it resonates and it gets you the desired result.
Yeah. No, that is a fantastic point. That goes along with so much, like goal setting, but specifically thank yous. If you're not being specific about what communicating your thanks to this other party or other individual is for, it's going to be forgettable, right? Like you're not going to be memorable, and it's going to come off as, again, maybe not disingenuous, but just kind of generic or hollow. Like, make it memorable, even if it's like a joke. Like that's the other thing too. So like for instance, I like to crack jokes all the time and laugh. Like I love to laugh, especially with my clients. If I know I can make my client laugh, I know that like I'm in, right? Like that's just the way it is. It's almost kind of the way my dating life went for for most of my life. But if I can make my client or prospect laugh, I know that, I've at least greased the wheels, right? So you can say thank you, like humorously too, like, thank you for not holding my bad singing against me or something, like, whatever the situation is. You can say thank you for those things too, and they become memorable because they're specific to that situation. Let me ask you another question about kind of like the handwritten notes and stuff. I know I'm kind of like fixated on this, but there's companies out there now that offer these kind of like automated, handwritten notes. And truthfully, when you look at them, it's very hard to tell that they're auto penned versus being handwritten. But without putting any of them specifically on blast or anything like that, I mean, what's your thought process on that? Is the efficiency of them worth what you're giving up in the sincerity?
Me personally, and of course it's going to come down to volume, right? Because obviously if you work for a machine of a company, you're churning these things out in the hundreds, and maybe, by the time your hand cramps, it's worth it.
That's an employment liability. That's an employer's liability claim like that.
Repetitious stuff. You got carpal tunnel from signing things. And it's interesting, right? Because my preference are actually the blank cards. They have a little image on the front and inside, because I write a little blurb, right? Hey, it was really great talking to you on this day, so on and so forth. And then me personally, I like to include like a pinch of business cards, especially if it's for a sale, right? And so I don't know how that would work logistically with fulfillment. Like, are you going to give them cards as well, and signatures and that bit? But yeah, I've seen those where, they basically, you give a handwriting sample and it kind of matches it, and that sort of thing. By the time that expense, Matt, I pick up a book of stamps and a box of cards. And, and again, I just send them when it's, convenient to send them. So I would say that some thank you is better than no thank you at all. Perhaps maybe you have it where it's like some sort of drop ship, every time you bind something goes out automatically, so that you're not having to put much thought into it. But, my purpose in doing the old fashioned one is it catches people off guard, and they're more inclined to actually open it up and read it and be like, oh, wow, did that just happen? That's not something that, thinking through ways to make yourself stand apart from your competitors.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and especially if it's a personalized message, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like if it's and I'm talking personalized beyond just including the person's name, like that's not personalized, right? Personalized is hearkening back to, something, an activity that you did together, or a story that you both kind of like found interesting or compelling, or that you shared with each other. That's what personalized is, because I think that's also becoming watered down, in the current environment. I mean, I really, not to go off on too much of a diatribe, but just hearkening back to the social media and the digital and stuff, like this for you and me is extremely personalized. We're sharing stories and personal anecdotes and things like that. So much of marketing, once something starts to, like, when there's a trend that starts to kind of like catch on, it seems like there's this rush of people that are just looking to take a factory mentality to it and make it as efficient. And again, I'm not like, throwing shade on any particular company or anything. There's uses for these things.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that when it becomes the standard, right? And so don't let it become the standard. Kind of the same way that, if you've seen someone, like most corporate social media feeds aren't worth following. They're just not. Like, and name the company, most of it is not worth following. There's a handful of people at those companies that get how social media is supposed to be done. And so they offer hot takes and individualized things that come out that are not these cookie cutter kind of like, legal approved like language that comes out, to the point where pretty much everyone is sharing the same exact thing. So that, if you've seen one Coke Christmas social media post, you've seen the Pepsi one, you've seen the Dr. Pepper one. They're all the same, right? But really, really kind of dig down and make it personalized. Like, don't just look, if the choice is not do it or do it half-assed, like at least put a modicum of energy into it and kind of take it from that just generic, like kind of like I'm going through the motions, thank you, to an honest, heartfelt, like stare the person in the eyes, like, thank you so much, I appreciate you. But yeah, I think that's a huge deal, is so much of it becomes automated, and we get attracted to the shiny new object, like, oh my God, I can send out 500 of these now. And sometimes you forget to think that the 5 that you hand addressed would be a higher ROI than the 500 that were run off by the printer.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, pick 1 or 2 things, be consistent, because I think that's something as well, to your point about being distracted by the shiny things, because oftentimes, we listen to a live cast, we go to a conference, we sit through a presentation, and we're on fire, right? We're like, oh man, I'm gonna go out here and change the world. And then it's too big to implement, and you just table it and you don't do anything, So just remembering, thanking our customers, thanking internally, the carriers that we interact with, the underwriters that support us, the staff that we have, thank yous don't cost you anything. And it could be that show of appreciation that really makes someone's day, And so I know that I respond to, appreciation. It makes me want to go the extra mile. And you just never know who else is going to, again, that's the takeaway.
Yeah. And a really good example of low-hanging fruit of what's available to send along with your thank you, which isn't necessarily like a gift with any kind of monetary price attached to it, is a vlog or a episode like this, where you might have a client that's in also the sales arena, maybe not in insurance, or if you're a wholesaler, of a broker that could be helped by this information. You can package that along with, an email that is thoughtfully worded, and pull out the highlights and say, like, they talk about this, this, and this. And you know what? People's time is valuable. We're running for an hour here. If you find something in minute 15 that's of value, send the link to your client, but point out, look, at minute 15, they talk about this, right? Don't expect them to watch the entire hour, because they'll watch the first 3 minutes and then you've basically wasted an opportunity. If you can pinpoint the time period in which it's on there for them to focus in on, hopefully they watch the full hour, because, you and I are freaking fantastic at what we're providing in terms of this information. But if you can pinpoint a time period on the video or the podcast, definitely do that as well, because it's really, it goes a lot further than just kind of half-assing it and forwarding a link along. So to that, you have anything to add? Anything else come to mind there, Precious?
Again, just maintaining this attitude of gratitude. I'm super appreciative that you invited me along this journey here, to be your co-host on this live cast. I mean, this is kind of the highlight of my week. I really enjoy this. Just thank everyone who, just grateful really to be in this industry at this time. There's so much good to be done. And so if anything that we share resonates, is meaningful, beneficial, and valuable, feedback, is really great, because we want to lean into the things that you guys find most helpful. Or if you have recommendations, suggestions, whatever the case is, it gets better with the interaction. So thank you. And, of course, I hope that everyone has a safe and enjoyable, holiday season this year. But yeah, that's kind of my final take. What about you?
I want to say thank you to you as well. I mean, we don't get paid the big bucks to do this. In fact, we don't get paid big buck.
Oh, you
It's
got one? I've not met mine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it is completely volunteer. So I want to say thank you as well for taking the leap with me. This is something that I completely agree with you. I'm like, I live for this hour. This hour and the hour coming up at 5:30 for How to CPCU. Like, I live for these 2 hours every single week because this is the most fun I get to have, and I get to talk about stuff that is valuable to me, but I also know is going to be, valuable to other people that are within the industry. So, and yeah, I'm building stronger competitors, but that at least kind of puts a fire under my butt to become even better and find the next great thing, But so yes, everyone have a safe, healthy, and happy Thanksgiving. We appreciate you too. Our super fan Tony, I think he might have logged off the live, but our super fan Tony, I didn't see Matt on or a couple of the other regulars, but I'm sure they'll catch this in post. But we thank you as well for kind of following us, and anyone who takes part in this and shares this and likes and comments and subscribes. We are very much thankful of you as well. So have a happy Thanksgiving, and as usual, be consistent. So every Wednesday, 3:00, sell like a CPCU. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Precious.
Guys.